some light on the whole issue of abductions and of the nature of the beings associated with them. It also sheds light on the blatantly unethical and unprofessional behavior of some of the scientists who have been charged with an assessment of the phenomenon. On December 3, 1967, Sergeant Herbert Schirmer was on patrol near Ashland, Nebraska at 2:30 a.m., a clear, moonless night, when he saw some red lights that he thought were on a truck. When he checked the location, however, he noticed that the lights came from the windows of a saucer-shaped object hovering above the highway. His next conscious recall is of the craft glowing brilliantly and rising with a siren-like sound while emitting a flame-colored material from its underside. He had a feeling of paralysis at the time and was nervous, weak, and sick when he returned to his office. Dr. Leo Sprinkle of the University of Wyoming was one of the first professional psychologists to take an interest in UFO abductions and to use hypnosis as an investigative tool. When he met with members of the Condon Committee, who had been funded by the U.S. Air Force at the University of Colorado in 1968, he reviewed with them a number of cases that could be used for demonstration. The committee selected the Schirmer case because of the loss of time experienced by the witness. When Sergeant Schirmer arrived in Boulder for a series of psychological tests, he asked to see Professor Condon. He had been induced to make the trip because of its potential scientific significance. He had been assured that serious interest existed in his sighting, and that Professor Edward Condon, the well-known physicist, would attend the session in person. Unfortunately, Dr. Condon was not on campus at the time, and the scientific committee realized that the trick they had used to get the officer to come and to be tested threatened to be exposed. So, Sergeant Schirmer told me they introduced someone else to him as Professor Condon. Schirmer was no fool. During the ensuing conversation, somebody came into the room and addressed Professor Condon by a first name which had no resemblance to Ed or Edward. Schirmer confronted the scientist. "You're not Condon," he cried, and a very embarrassing scene followed. From that point on, the credibility of the University of Colorado project was very close to nil in the eyes of the witness. When he was shown ink blots and was asked to say what he saw there, he stated the obvious. He saw ink blots. "Well, can't you imagine that they are something else?" asked one of the psychologists. "Doctor, I'm a law enforcement officer," Schirmer replied. "I'm not supposed to imagine things. I'm trained to report on things that are real." Schirmer told me that he was afraid that if he started seeing butterflies or copulating elephants in ink blots, the scientists would quickly conclude that here was a nutcase who could just as easily see flying saucers where there was only a cluster of clouds. During our meeting, I asked Sergeant Schirmer directly about any health effects he might have suffered as a result of the UFO encounter. At the time of the experience, the witness felt a tingling in his body for a few seconds, and local pain behind the base of the ear. He showed me the precise location, as if a needle had been inserted there. A red welt with tiny holes developed at that spot. For 3 years after the sighting, he experienced throbbing headaches that lasted 2 hours and were not alleviated by aspirin. For the first 3 weeks following the sighting, these headaches would actually wake him up. I also inquired about his dreams, and I learned that they included a vision of a landscape with 3 mountain ranges, strange domes, and UFOs. Dr. Sprinkle noted that after the sighting, the witness drank 2 cups of hot, steaming coffee like it was water. He often experienced a ringing numbness and buzzing in his ears before going to sleep, and other violent disturbances during his sleep. Sergeant Schirmer presented me with a detailed pencil drawing of one of the operators of the craft as he remembered him under hypnosis. It shows a stern-looking man with a piece of dark clothing covering the head. The opening for the face has an ogival shape that gives it a very Gothic appearance. The forehead is wrinkled. The eyes, nose, mouth, and eyebrows are of normal size, although the pupils are enlarged and elongated, giving the eyes a penetrating, fascinated look. Over the left ear there is a small round device with a short antenna, less than 2 inches long, and over the right shoulder is a patch insignia representing a winged serpent. Schirmer recalled being taken out of the patrol car, unable to use his radio or his gun. He was given a tour of the saucer. The operator asked him, "Are you the watchman over this place?" And when they reached the top of the craft, the man told Schirmer, "Watchman, someday you will see the universe." At the time of our meeting, many years after the event, his dialogue with the operator stood out as the most significant event in Schirmer's life. UFO encounters are complete frameworks into which the personality of the witness becomes projected. Like a movie that terrifies you, makes you cry, laugh, or perspire in anguish, the experience becomes part of the witness's reality. The ufologists behave like social researchers who, trying to understand the phenomenon of the cinema, would randomly interview people coming out of theaters and take their testimony at face value. Like the UFO witnesses, these people are not lying. Some of them have seen